CBSE Board, History, Chapter 8, Part 1, Audio by Rini Matthew. Welcome to the first part of video for the chapter Clothing, a Social History. It's very difficult for everybody to read history books and gather the points. And these videos will help you to develop for short and long answer questions with the points given on each slide. So make the most of it by listening to it attentively. I hope you have a textbook in front of you. It can be a soft copy or a hard copy. So shall we begin? Before we delve into the chapter, I would like you to focus on these objectives which is given by the CBSE curriculum, and this is the main target for you this year in history. Children usually ask, why do we learn history and what is the significance of history as a subject in the curriculum? History gives us an idea of how things have evolved and why they change. If you really have to connect with your contemporary world, if you have to connect with your present world, you need to know a little bit of the history on how things evolved, on how things transformed and reached this particular stage. Once we learn to ask historical questions about all that is around us, it allows us to see everyday things from a different angle. So when we ask questions like how it came about, what happened before this, who were behind this, all these kind of questions will help you to relate better with the forms, changes, or whatever you are gifted today. And still things are changing. This is not the end point. Today will become a history maybe after 40 years, maybe after 50 years. Everything is in the progress of developing and it keeps on evolving. We realize that ordinary things have a history that is important for us to know. So as I told you earlier, whatever you have in your hand, even a pencil or a pen, it has got its own evolution story which can be presented in an interesting way. Yes, so everything will be connected in the present world through a story of evolution, through a story of transformation and so much of reformation. It helps us to know the contemporary world better. This particular chapter is divided into 5 parts. You can see all the 5 parts here. And each part is so crisp, it is presented in such a way that only the main points are given on the slides. Even your textbook doesn't have extra information which is not relevant. All the points are presented in a very crisp manner, enough for you to understand and comprehend with. So shall we get started with the first part of Clothing, a Social History. So psychologists usually say that you can analyze a person or assess a person based on the way a person dresses or carries himself or herself. It is the way you talk, the way you respond, and apart from all that, it is the way you dress up. And whatever you're wearing now, those who are listening to me, it has got an evolution story. The clothes that we wear has got a history. All societies observe certain rules, some of them quite strict about the way in which men, women, and children should dress. And we as Indians, we are quite familiar with all these things because we are a bit strict on the way men clothe themselves or dress themselves up, women how they dress up, how they carry themselves, children also. And you have got different attire for different occasions. When you're going to the office, it is a different choice that you should make. When you're going to teach, it is a different choice that you have to make. When you go for a party, it is different. So the choice is different and you have to change according to the demand of the occasions, right? So there are certain rules that we follow, especially for men, women, and children. or how different social classes and groups should present themselves. So it is a part of presentation as it is clearly given in these points. When you look at a person, the way a person dresses, definitely your eyes will go to the style of carrying, the style the person carries himself or herself. It is not the beauty of the dress, whether it is glittering, whether it has got so many sequins, whether it has got embroidery work, that is detailing. It is not that alone. Whether the person carries himself or herself properly, whether it is comfortable. Today we have got this particular term, comfort zone. I dress according to my comfort zone. That is what many people say. But in the olden times, it was not like that. Nobody gave you a chance to even think of this comfort zone. There were so many rules for men, women, and children, and you were supposed to dress according to the rules, according to the norms, and according to the demand of the society. And if we are wearing something very comfortable today, it's only because of so much of work behind the reformers and the people who really worked behind this. So let's go back. So, why did we have all these things? These norms come to define the identity of people, just like how I told you a few minutes back. It is the identity of people which is very important. The way they see themselves, the way they want others to see them. So, why do you dress so much for a party? You can go in a white and white dress or something which is very ordinary without having that very good decorative new clothes or new wardrobe that you purchased recently. Of course, you're concerned about the way you present yourself. It is not just the status, but you want to present in a different way when you go to the party or when you go to your school or when you go to the office. It is part of your identity. Some people are known, the personality of a person, it is part of the dressing also. Sometimes great people, when they dress up, for example, Mahatma Gandhi, his dressing has become a part of his personality. It is so well known. And there is a reason for why he dresses up like that, right? So sometimes dress becomes a part of your personality. And definitely for everybody, it is a part of your identity also. As times change and societies are transformed, these notions also alter modifications in clothing, come to reflect these changes. So as we go through changes, as we evolve, as the society changes, particularly, our clothes will also change because the outlook of the people will change, the perspective of the people will change, rules will change. Even now, if you see, the world is going through a major change, right? Yes. So that is why we have got all these norms. The main thing is to decide the identity of the people, the way they see themselves, and the way they want others to see. And as times go by, what happens? These notions also go through changes, alterations, and modifications. The emergence of the modern world is marked by dramatic changes in clothing. So, if you look at the whole world, each place, each region has gone through a lot of clothing changes, not only countries, each region has gone through a lot of changes. It is like the whole wardrobe that was carried from the centuries has gone through a lot of changes. In this chapter, we will look at some of the histories of clothing in the modern period, that is, in the 19th and 20th centuries. We are not going too far behind. It is the modern period. 19th and 20th century is known as the modern period in history. So that itself, when we look at the 19th century itself, we can see a lot of changes. They don't dress like how we do now. There's a lot of change. 20th century, you may think 20th century is like something very near, but there are a lot of changes. When you look at the films will always project the current trends, like that is how things come into being. But there's a lot of change in the wardrobe selection, the way people dress, even in the movies or in the interviews or any concert, right? Yes, so it has gone through a lot of changes. Now, why the 19th and 20th centuries are very important? Why are these two centuries important? That is what we are going to look into the next slide. Now, before the 18th century, what happened? Age of democratic revolutions and capitalist markets. So many people went through hell. It's like even the working classes, there was a lot of distinction in the society. You had working classes, you had people who just worked for the higher hierarchy. Yes, nobody had freedom. So before 18th century, there was a lot of transformation in terms of clothes, society, economy. Whatever was done, there was a lot of changes. So before the 18th century, there were democratic revolutions, and capitalism also changed. Markets changed, everything changed. So after the 18th century, dressing was done as per regional codes. There were some codes, like now you have got dress code, right? Then it was like regional code. This region will dress like this, not for days. It is according to the region that they dressed up. And what is the meaning of all this? To show how they present themselves, and it is a part of their identity also. So, what happened when people started dressing based on their regional codes? There were a lot of limitations, and the two factors which brought about this limitation were the first one, the type of clothes, cost of material. So there were restrictions on what you're going to wear, the type of cloth that you get, because one region will wear one type of cloth and the other region was not supposed to wear that. Whatever is designated for one region shouldn't be used by the other region. It was like that. So the type of clothes used was different. The cost of the material was different. So people were restricted from buying all these things. So clothing styles were also strictly regulated by class, gender, or status in the social hierarchy. So it's not just the regional code. So much of regulation was there. So apart from, see, when they imposed regional code itself, there were two limitations. What was that? The type of clothes. There were restrictions on what you're going to get. Second is the cost of the material. Some were costly, some were affordable, some you just couldn't afford. So people were restricted. You couldn't wear what you liked. Then, clothing styles were also strictly regulated by class, gender, and status. So, after this regional code, according to the class, according to the gender, and according to the status in the social hierarchy, the clothing style also changed. So much of restrictions were imposed that people did not have any freedom to dress. All right? After 18th century, what happened? Colonization of the world by Europe. That is something which looted many countries, even Africa. Yes, even our country, so much of colonization took place. Colonization of India did not take place at that time, but so many other countries were looted and colonized by Europe. So when somebody comes and, takes control, when somebody dominates your country, which was so free till then, you have lot of restrictions. The spread of democratic ideals and the growth of an industrial society completely changed the ways in which people thought about dressing and its meanings. So when people from some other place come and dominate, they will have their own dressing style. You will also get influence. That is what happened in India also. So when the Europeans came, they had their own style of dressing, they had their own style of language, and everything gets mixed up. So democratic ideals changed. The ruling style changed. Industries started flourishing. So, when the industries started flourishing, there was a lot of change. People could use styles and materials that were drawn from other cultures and locations, and Western dress styles for men were adopted worldwide. So it is like when you stay in your country for a long time, you don't have access or exposure to other style of dressing, but suddenly somebody comes into your place. You can imagine the situation in your own home. People from some other place comes and stays with you for 2 months. You'll definitely get influenced by the way they dress up, by the way they talk, by the way they eat. Yes? So similarly, that was the same case for all the countries which were colonized by Europe. When Europeans came in, the way they dressed, the way they talked, everything was influenced. They didn't have to really impose. Some were imposed, but people had access to so much of dress material, cloth type from different culture and locations, and that is how things changed. All right? Okay.